Hello guys and welcome to Man Discovers Tech. Today I'm going to compare the Samsung Odyssey G7 to the HP Omen X27. One is a VA type panel with a 1000R curvature, the other is a more traditional TN panel with no curvature at all. Watch this review to see my thoughts on what is best. If you could like the video and subscribe to this channel, you'd really help me out guys. Thank you. First I'm going to talk about the setup and ease of use. In terms of setup, the Samsung Odyssey G7 wasn't really that hard to set up. You'll need to put in like 4 or 5 screws, but you have to be very careful lifting the monitor out of the box because the monitor really likes to slide up its stand on its own. The monitor stand is also very big and it was slightly too long for my desk, but in terms of function it was very good. You can tilt the monitor, you can height adjust it, and you can also swivel it. The HP was a lot easier to set up out of the box. You literally just click the monitor into the stand and it's that easy. There's no screws as far as I can tell. The HP also allows for height adjustment and tilt adjustment, but no swivel adjustment is on this model. Let's talk about the colors. The Samsung is a VA type panel. The HP is a TN type panel. The Samsung was actually pre-calibrated from the factory, and I calibrated the HP according to the Samsung as a reference display. Once calibrated, both displays were very hard to distinguish in terms of colors. In terms of which color had the most pop and visual appeal, I would go with the Samsung. VA monitors are traditionally meant to be somewhat better than TN monitors for color reproduction, so there's not really a surprise there. Next we want to talk about the contrast levels, and in particular I'm going to look at the black levels. One strength of a VA panel compared to a TN panel is the perceived contrast. Contrast is one of the most important aspects of the image quality, and it's what gives the image the kind of three-dimensional look, and it's what makes like images pop off the screen. Now, being a VA panel, the Samsung was better as you'd expect. The minimum black on the Samsung was a little bit lower compared to the TN panel in the HP. And it was enough to see quite a noticeable difference during dark scenes. The Samsung was also more enjoyable to watch in general. Another thing to say is that high static contrast of a display really helps define the edges of objects. So a higher contrast level can also lead to sharper looking images. Again, the edges on the Samsung panel seem to have a little bit more depth and definition compared to that of the TN panel that we find in the HP Omen X27. Next up is pixel response time and input lag. Pixel response time is something that traditionally favors TN panels over VA panels. VA panels seem to suffer from black smearing in particular in dark scenes, and I've witnessed this before with other VA panels. I was surprised to see that the 240Hz display of the Samsung was so quick that actually I would have put it ahead of the TN panel in the HP. In fact, it really seemed a little bit better than the one in the HP. If by a fraction, I would have given the edge to the Samsung Odyssey G7. I also tried playing around with the pixel overdrive settings in the menus of both of these monitors, but the Samsung always seemed to have the slight edge. Next we're going to talk about maximum brightness of the monitors. I would say they were very similar when you look by eye, but when we changed the exposure of the camera, it allowed me to see that the Samsung was actually a little bit brighter. However, the minimum brightness of the panels was a little bit different. The HP actually was able to lower its brightness a little bit compared to the Samsung. Again, you can only see this really when the camera's exposure is adjusted. Next up, the anti-glare coating on the display. Now, the anti-glare coating on the Samsung, just gonna say it seems a lot better to me. It blocks out the unwanted reflections in your ambient setting, but at the same time, the colors in the image are not severely affected enough to ruin the image quality. The HP has a much more aggressive anti-glare coating compared to the Samsung, and that means when you have bright scenes or hot spots on the panel, you will see the anti-glare coating shine through, and it's really annoying day to day to have to see this, especially when you spend so much on the monitor. One thing in particular is when you browse the web, because on the HP you can really see white web pages have a very clear, strong anti-glare coating that is very, very distracting. And for me, I understand reflections can be distracting, but anti-glare coatings can also be very distracting too, and it takes away your image quality, so I really don't understand the appeal here. I would personally say that my favorite type of display is a semi-glossy display, which you get quite often in TVs. It helps to block some of the light, but it still allows enough of the monitor's own light to shine through the coating. Colors and perceived contrast always seem to be better to me on semi-glossy displays. That being said, I would be able to live with the Samsung's anti-glare coating, but I would not be able to live with the HP's aggressive coating. Day to day, no way I could live with it. Immersiveness. Now this category I've added in because I believe that the curvature on the Samsung's display on the Odyssey G7, it really adds a little bit more to immersiveness. Now, like I said earlier, the Samsung has a 1000R curve, which is a very big curve. The higher the number, the lower the curve is. So a 1000R curvature, like the one on the Samsung, is going to have a more distinct curve compared to, let's say, a 1800R monitor. So yeah, the Samsung is definitely very bold when it comes to its curve. The HP, by comparison, is a standard flat monitor. To my eyes, the 1000R curve made a big difference when it came to immersiveness. Images seemed like they were within my reach, like the snake in this demo here, it seemed like it almost was in front of me. The HP, by comparison, always made it seem like you were just looking at a monitor. When working, the curve can get a little bit annoying, for example when you're on the web or when you're doing video editing or anything like that. And a lot of people will say that 1000R is too steep a curve on a 16:9 display. I would agree that that is true to an extent, but you would be surprised how much easier it is on the eye. Looking at a large flat display means my eyes are moving left to right even more, because the far sides of the monitor are actually further away than the center, whereas on a 1000R display, the left and right hand sides of the display are about the same distance from my eyes as the center of the monitor, and I found that my eyes were much more comfortable in the long run when I was using the G7. Overall, I would say that I prefer the 1000R curve in the Samsung for my day-to-day use, but it might not be appropriate for some other users who do some like graphic design work or something like that. And also, to benefit from this 1000R display, you really have to sit in front of the monitor. If you sit to the sides at all, then it won't look very good. In my situation, I'd say 1000R is what I like, or 1500R at the least. Viewing angles. Viewing angles seem to favor the Samsung. It's a VA display, and this is one of the inbuilt advantages it has over TN technology. The VA in the Samsung was just a lot better in my opinion, and the TN panel in the HP also had a nasty yellow tint when moving to one side. Either way, viewing angles aren't really a strong point of any LCD technology, including IPS, and both of these pale compared to OLED displays in the real world. Overall, I feel the value is better with the Samsung Odyssey G7. It's about the same price when you buy the 27-inch model. It's a similar sort of price to the HP Omen. The contrast is better, the stand is a bit more versatile, although it is a very big stand, it is more versatile. The curve adds a lot of immersiveness, like I explained earlier, and I think a lot of people will prefer that more immersive image because you're paying a lot of money for this monitor. The pixel response time also seemed to be just as fast as the HP, if not faster than the HP's TN display. The colors were almost the same, if not better than the HP as well, and the anti-glare coating on the HP was horrendous, whereas the anti-glare coating on the Samsung was actually acceptable and much better applied. I even found the menus were much more easy to navigate on the Samsung Odyssey G7. The joystick style approach at the bottom of the display is much nicer to use than the rear mounted buttons on the HP. I made far fewer mistakes using the Samsung Odyssey overall when I tried to adjust the picture. If I had one complaint about the Samsung, and it's not really about the display itself, it's the 1000R curve. It could have been put to better use on a 21:9 display. Now Samsung does have a model, a 21:9 model with a 1000R curvature, and that's called the Odyssey G5. However, the Odyssey G5, the stand is a little bit worse than the G7, and the refresh rate is only 165 Hz, meaning that the pixel response time is probably not to the same level as the G7, and so they weren't able to put 240 Hz into that display. And yeah, I think the only way to get a 240 Hz display in some sort of ultra wide display is to get the G9, which is a super ultra wide 32:9 display, and I think that's far too expensive considering that the image quality that you get, the monitor doesn't really justify its price tag. However, when the new mini LED version of the G9 comes out, that will probably be a really good buy compared to the current G9. But in terms of the G7, that's the only thing I would say. 16:9 1000R, some people will think it's a bit too strong. 21:9 would be better, so a 21:9 G7 would be perfect. Anyways guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Remember to subscribe if you like unbiased reviews, if you like factual reviews, if you like that sort of thing, consider subscribing to this channel.